let's say you took the 40,000 that are, and you took a poll of them, how many people believe that you create your reality? How many people believe that what you focus on, and all these kind of spiritual / personal growth / New Age homilies, most people would agree with all of them. Yet they aren't, in a practical sense, acting as if they believe them at all.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the conscious awareness to notice themselves doing all these things.
It is indeed an era where this kind of research can start to be done, and that's what I think is so really exciting about all of this. In the integral psychology model, we work with 4 quadrants and levels and lines, and the spiral dynamics Claire Graves values is one of about a dozen intelligences that human beings have, but it's an easy one to use, and we use it a lot. But it's one way to track stage development in the psychological space in what we call the upper left. What to me is so fascinating is that, and this is where I think research can really help us, you were bringing up the point about why some people, they seem to be more open to growth and transformation. The ones that aren't seem in some ways possibly to be traumatized, which sets in motion a habit of contracting around an image of exactly that which you want to get away from, and so the more you try to get away from it, the more you're stuck to it, and it's a self-fulfilling cycle. And part of what I think we're going to continue to learn also is if we can do a psychograph of individuals, in other words, just kind of get a sense of what developmental levels they're at, what lines they're using, what pathologies they have in some of the different levels and lines that they're working with. We're going to start to get a sense about what technologies work for them best and which ones, maybe Zen meditation here, maybe TM there, maybe yoga over there, combined with what kind of holosync types of technology. And obviously there are going to be others as well. We're going to have, electromagnetic fields are starting to be used to induce brain states, and we are still on the edge of pioneering research into all of that stuff, which is really fascinating. But one of the things that we continue to find in research is that there really are states and stages in both the upper right and the upper left. So there are brain states, alpha, theta, beta, and so on. And there are brain stages, and stages are very similar to what you're talking about. If you're actually laying down neuronal connections, you're actually growing the brain in a certain way, and that tends to be a stage-like growth process. And the same in the upper left. There are states of consciousness. You can have meditative states, you can have natural states, waking, dreaming, peak experiences, and so on. And then there are these stages of psychological structure building and growth and development. And they tend to go together. So if you induce a brain state, there's a corresponding state of consciousness. And then what we find is that the more people experience states, the quicker it helps them grow through stages. And so that, to me, is what is so really wonderful about holosync and these types of technologies, is that by applying really a physical stimulus, in a sense, working with the upper right, working with the brain, working with brain states of physiology, you can induce some of these kinds of processes that set in motion both consciousness expansion to some degree, and we're both hypothesizing some kind of growth, some way that it becomes not just a passing state, but a permanent trait, an actual state.
There's a certain increase in self-awareness, and my hypotheses would be that, there are parts of the brain that operate largely outside of a person's awareness.
Yeah.
Somebody is making all kinds of pictures in their brain as they process, their reality. Somebody says, yeah, I just came from breakfast. And so for you to process that statement, you make this little picture in your mind of me eating breakfast.
Right.
And you may not be aware that you even made, most people wouldn't be aware of even making that picture.
Right.
It just zooms by. But there's a certain point when people begin, there's another part of the brain, I suspect, that becomes aware of what other parts of the brain are doing that ordinarily would be just zooming by unconsciously. And the more that somebody becomes aware of what their brain is doing, there's something really interesting that happens. One of the insights I had a number of years ago was that people can do harmful, dysfunctional things to themselves over and over and over as long as they do them unconsciously.
Yeah.
But as soon as you become aware of, and by aware of I don't mean intellectually aware.
No.
So I don't mean that you just, most people that are in personal growth stuff could write a master's thesis about their stuff, but it doesn't change anything. But when I say aware, I mean that you watch the entire creative process, how you're creating what's going on, from the inception of it to the actual event itself, whether the event is a state that you're experiencing, you're feeling anxious or whatever, or it's some behavior. watch yourself create whatever you're creating, if it is not resourceful for you, it becomes really impossible to continue to do it.
Yeah.
So a lot of really interesting things happen when people become more self-aware.
Yeah.
And all kinds of behaviors that are, socially unacceptable and not good for the planet and all that just fall away naturally because they're harmful.
Fritz Perls said awareness in and of itself is curative. And
yes.
I think that's pretty much what we're talking about here. And you find that the holosync technology helps awareness to some degree, yeah?
Not just to some degree. I mean, it's really remarkable,
the
self-awareness that people get from doing it.
From doing it. And let me just footnote these two. I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but perhaps you could tie it in with, you mentioned previously that the way that you have structured the introductory holosync sessions, for example, goes through awakening, purification, flowering, and so on. And I take it that you hit upon these again and kind of experimenting, trying this, trying that, see the results, and so on. Is it still guided more by the thought of just helping stimulate the brain in a way that triggers its pregagine, dissipative structure, self-evolving growth, or are you still also trying to induce certain states because those help with the growth process? Could you talk a little bit about the actual technology and how you see that driving and helping awareness?